This week's Throwback Thursday episode features one of my favorite conversations with Moose Mutlow. He's got some crazy stories and a very healthy perspective from the world of search and rescue. Have a good week, everybody. With me today is a man who has been an Outward Bound instructor, a street performer, and since 2002 a member and senior trainer of Yosemite Search and Rescue. Moose Mutlow, how's it going today, sir?
It's great. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be along after a pretty robust training schedule this spring with Yosemite Search and Rescue.
Yes, yeah. And we appreciate everything you do as a trainer and training for that, because I'm sure there's been a lot of lives you saved and a lot of stories you have, and we're happy to jump into it. I don't know how often you're meeting new folks in like social gatherings, but when people find out what you've been doing for a living, what's the most common question that you get?
You're a bit old for that. Is a pretty typical one I get. It's
that's not a question. That's just judgment.
It is, but it's a good reminder. It's one of those things where experience speaks. Your longevity is based on incidents and varied experiences, and it definitely is a younger person game on the physicality. I can't go ripping up the Yosemite Falls Trail 2 or 3 times over a weekend and hauling a litter like I used to. It's right. I'm a bit more staid in my approach. So yeah,
Yosemite Falls Trail, that's like a 5-mile, 3,000-foot gain trail in Yosemite, correct?
Yeah, it's getting there, and it has this narrowness and the windiness that it's if you're pulling someone down in a litter, you're moving down with speed with a big wheel underneath and bouncing down the steps. And you're doing it at night. You've got to be on top of your game.
I've encountered those folks in Yosemite that are doing that, where they're hiking in. I think it was in the Grand Canyon of Tuolumne a couple of years ago when somebody had to get yanked out. So yeah, and they were moving.
And that's one of the key pits, is that a lot of times people have the idea that they're going to get this deluxe rescue with a helicopter, and it's not. It's feet on the ground for the most part, especially at night when pumpkin time rolls around and you can't fly a helicopter because we don't have nighttime capability. You're coming out over several hours. If you're lucky to come out that night, you're not overnighting.
Right. I got a scenario for you, a little bit of a story here. So the year is 1996.
Great year.
And I'm floating down the river between the first and second drop of Yosemite Falls. So it's got 3 drops between the first and the second one. All right. I fly over a 10-foot section, so like a 10-foot kind of mini waterfall, and I'm headed quickly toward the next, I think it's like a 675-foot drop. As I'm floating down there, at that point, what would you put my chances of survival to be?
Well, Middle Earth is the area you're talking about, and it's a series, as you know, robust rocky drops into big pools. It would depend a lot on your flows, but for the most part, if you're in the flow, you're going to go off the bottom drop, and it's an unsurvivable drop.
So that was something that happened when I was before I got into hiking and backpacking. I was new to everything, and I was following some guys in, and I did get the helicopter rescue that day. So I did get the guys coming down, and they rappelled down into that little rock wall canyon as I was hanging onto a rock. I was blessed that day, because as I think about that scenario, I think there's a lot of folks that don't survive that, right?
There have been some really comedic survival ones recently in the last decade, where people have stared death in the face and just caught the right eddy and pulled out on the right rock and being able to sit there, and we've had a good fly day, and we've been able to do a short haul or a winch out. Everything went right in that moment. But for the most part, once you get in the water, you're in the flow, you're in spring flow, there is nothing going to stop you but the ground. That's where you're going to stop, is when you come off the drop.
Well, they said, as they're yanking me out, they're like, oh, somebody just died here last week. And I was like, okay.
So you had a lucky escape. It's a good story, though. Have you written that down? Have you written down your experience?
It's not like one of those epic things where I'm like flying off the edge and I'm like, one last grab. I grab onto the rock. It's nothing like that. But we have talked about it on our podcast, so it's been chronicled, I guess, a little bit. I don't think I've ever gotten any feedback on that. Well, your reaction is the most feedback I've ever gotten. Typically, it's more like, you're lucky or you're an idiot kind of thing.
Well,
So,
I think there's a move often to judge people very quickly, like,
right.
oh, you shouldn't have done it. You're stupid. Actually, you're a younger man. Younger men exist in risk taking as part of their development. 99.9% of the time, it's an awesome story. You're okay. And then tragically, there's this small percentage where you don't come back and somebody lives with that forever. So I work pretty hard to not judge, because my early development, I was out on the fells in cotton, wearing inadequate footwear, doing stuff I probably shouldn't have been doing. But that's the foundation of my outdoor career.
Yeah, and mine too. That was before. I mean, had not been on a backpacking trip at that point. I had done like 2 big hikes, and that was it. And I was following more experienced guys. So
Yeah.
I appreciate your level of understanding. Looking back on that, I wish I had more wisdom, of course.
But you make a good point. You're following other people, and I think there's that one of the things I would love to see out of all of these things is a rediscover of apprenticeship and mentorship. Is that the more experienced people have to help relate how to be safe out there, how to be safer, or the decision-making process to get you into that situation. And I think there's been an erosion of the ability to effectively share how we come to decisions and make appropriately, and I'm going to use the word conservative, safety decisions. So you can come back and tell your own story. It's not that you want somebody else to tell your story.
Speaking of all this, what's a search and rescue story that you have that's really stuck with you or impacted you the most over the years? Is there one that kind of stands out to you?
Well, I think there's a lot of sad ones that stand out because of the nature of tragedy. I think that there are a few successful ones. There was a successful one a couple of years ago. An adult went out on a snow hike and disappeared, didn't come back to their car. The companions said, hey, she hasn't returned. And it was winter, it was heavy snow, we had a little bit of a storm front come through, and everything pointed to it not being right. And what ended up happening is she did everything right. She got lost. She's like, okay, I've got a problem. I'm going to find a tree. She was smaller. She got inside a tree stump. She broke off boughs. She made herself a little nest. She got herself through the night and was discovered the next morning, having rediscovered her compass direction, having her own rescue. And I love that story because if you look at it as a statistic, everything said it was probably going to be negative, but it worked out perfectly, and it was based on her self-reliance. That's what got her through. And I think she was actually a cancer survivor. So she had this deep sense of reliance, potentially, or belief in herself born out of treatment as well, which made it all the more compelling as a story to remember.
If you're lost, I thought that you're just supposed to stay put. Like you said she refigured out where she was, so maybe that makes sense. But generally speaking, is that true?
Yeah, if you're hopelessly lost and you keep walking, trying to get yourself out of it, and you haven't had a pause to reassess and go, hang on a minute, what just happened? What's going on here? Like in snow country, if you get lost and you're out there on your own, you can retrace your steps for the most part. It's pretty easy to track back out.
That's true.
I think in the one we just described, night came and she lost all bearing because she didn't know where the sun was and what the sky was and where the shadows were at. And she just stopped and collected herself. She looked after warmth, food, shelter. And she didn't get herself into that hypothermic state.
Like over the years, we've heard some pretty crazy stories about people getting themselves in unnecessary or ridiculous situations. You know, a lot of them actually are from the Grand Canyon, where people are kind of wheeling suitcases down to the bottom without water, and then they have to get rescued. What are the most common rescues that you found that are like unnecessary or ridiculous?
I think people overestimating their ability and underestimating the challenge. So come from sea level from the coast in California and come to Yosemite and try and do Half Dome in a day, and having no idea of that altitude they're going to get to, or to carry inadequate water. That's kind of a reoccurring model. And then there's just sort of ludicrous survival ones that I like. There was a great one with a guy in the backcountry who looks at this big granite peak with a big old ramp going up it and decides to climb it. And as he ascends, he realizes his shoes aren't really working that well, so he takes them off and puts them around his neck. And then he keeps going up, and it's gone from that smooth U floor to the more vertical. And he ends up in a high vertical section, falls twice, and ends up on a small ledge looking outward in a little chimney, and realizes he can either climb up or down. And is like facing death. And at that point, he remembers he has his phone.
Oh.
And so he makes a phone call, and by some quirk, he's in a little bit of a cell pocket and he gets the signal out, but we're really busy. So we have 3 other calls going on.
Okay.
And when it comes into the instant command, he just sort of says, I'm on a ledge. And we're like, oh, we could put that one on a back burner. We don't need to worry about that when he's on a ledge.
Yeah.
And they leave it for a while and eventually do an overflight. And he was on a ledge, but it was like 6 inches wide.
Okay.
And he was facing an 1,800-foot drop. And he just stayed there for hours because there wasn't anything he could do.
Yeah.
And they inserted a team above him and they said, we've got one goat grabbing him. And they grabbed him and they got him off of there. And I remember him walking into the IC. And he had the 1,000-yard stare. He had faced death, and he'd come out of it. And there's a picture of him actually with his shoes around his neck and his bare feet. He is everything could have gone wrong. It didn't.
Right.
And his judgment was off a little bit at that moment of like what I can do with the summit. But somehow he held it all together and he got through it.
Yeah.
You know, the human spirit has deep resilience when it's actually accessed and we choose to recognize it.
That is amazing.
That's what got him through it.
And he obviously didn't panic. He didn't start freaking out because that would have been possibly enough to send him over the ledge, right?
He'd be total toast. He was standing there for like 3 hours, I think, on the ledge on his heels.
Okay.
Because he had no option. He couldn't sit down on it. He couldn't down climb.
Just getting to that ledge, I imagine, was crazy. Just if he's sliding down or whatever, that must have been an insane, like, I'm about to go over.
He fell down a chimney. Like he was dry rock. He's climbing up a peak and he falls twice to end up on that ledge.
So you're already dealing with other phone calls. Is this common where you have a day where you're like, okay, we've got 4 rescues or 5 rescues. Like this person has to wait. You know, you're basically prioritizing different situations.
Yeah, on a busy day, you might about 3 o'clock, you start to see this ramp up on a busy weekend, and you might have 2 or 3 run like a medical in the valley floor and a couple of pullouts on the trail. But I've been there on a day where we've used every resource, and I'm the last person.
Okay.
And I'm being sent up the Yosemite Falls Trail with a litter pack with nobody else to help me. And they've just said, the instant command has just said, start walking and we'll find some people and they'll catch you up on the trail. And they did catch me up. And we had like 3 or 4 of us to do a litter carry out high up on the Falls Trail. But they can stack up and you can be triaging.
That is crazy. I didn't realize there was that many. So
230 calls a year, 8 to 20 deaths a year. A busy year, 20 on that 20 with them. That's medicals of people just passing away on the valley floor, cardiac, and it's just their time. And then you might have 8, 12 trauma, drowning, complications on the trail.
So what's the most common way people pass away in Yosemite? Is it the cardiac arrest, like elevation, falling, or drowning? What would you say?
Well, in a busy year, like a big snow year, drownings is up there. You could have 3, 4, maybe 5 drownings in a pretty narrow window. And then there's a lot of cardiac action. A lot of times people pushing it out on the trail and coming with an underlying condition, and then a little dehydration and a little stress, a little altitude, all conspire to have a negative.
All right, I got a question. As an experienced person, you must just see movies that take place in the wild or the wilderness, and you might, I don't know if you are impressed by them or if you're shaking your head at them, but growing up, one of my favorite movies was Cliffhanger. And in the opening scene, with Sylvester Stallone, there's search and rescue rock climbers. They had to set up a Tyrolean traverse between 2 rock towers so that the helicopter has a better landing spot. Is there anything in this scene that could really happen in this kind of search and rescue scenario?
No. because it's just kind of insane, and that's the beauty of it. I actually saw Cliffhanger in Zimbabwe when it first came out. I was living in Zimbabwe, yeah. And it's one of the greatest experiences of my life because I went to a cinema. It was in Harare, in the southern part of Zimbabwe. And I'd never been in a cinema where the entire audience participated in the movie in the same way. That moment where the thing fails, people stand in the air and they were screaming and shouting and just going nuts. There's a later piece where he's running to try and get to the edge of something, and people stood up and the entire audience, hundreds of people, were just shouting, "Run! Right, it was like the full-on crowd participation. It was one of the greatest entertainment experiences of my life, which makes that movie really special to me because in sort of saying, yeah, that will never happen. It's also sort of this balance of like, yeah, but it brought so much joy in that moment. It was so fantastic.
Yeah, or one of the parts where like I guess he goes under the ice. And so now he's like, high altitude, completely submerged in icy water. And the next scene, he's just dry, just kind of sitting there.
It's totally nuts. In fact, just to follow up, the second movie, we had such a good time seeing Cliffhanger. We went back the next night and we saw Jurassic Park.
Oh, wow.
And that was equally as fantastic.
Yeah.
But it was an evening show and it was a slightly different crowd. But like, yeah, any of these pieces that sort of, with all of these movies that get people excited about the outdoors, if it gets people in the outdoors and then they discover it's not quite as sort of insane as it looks, but they're in the outdoors, it's a good thing. It's just entertainment. The only shows that really annoy me are like, which I can't watch, are kind of the survivor shows, which have these artificial challenges, because there are local people who live in those environments who deal with these challenges every day with a lot less, and they do great. And so it's so contrived. I can't enjoy them at all. I can't have it. I see no value in them at that moment personally for me to watch.
So you're referring to more like Survivor versus shows like Alone, where they're just trying to live off the land. Is that what you're saying?
It's interesting. So Alone came on, and my wife watched it, and she really enjoyed it. And she said it's a fantastic show. It's got all of these elements that you would love. And I watched it for a bit, and again, I'm like, it doesn't capture my attention. I've been really hungry in the outdoors. Haven't got that level of survivor skill, but I've been really hungry for days on end because we had a food drop in Australia where they tipped gasoline all over our food. So the first job we did on a 3 or 4 day resupply was figure out how much food was tainted, and we lost 60-70% of our food.
Oh, wow.
And so we headed out with a bunch of teenagers on the river for 3 or 4 days with way too little food to get through it.
Right.
And so I've been sort of in that hardship of trying to manage for a very short amount of time real food deprivation and real challenges with levels of energy and all the associated pieces that come with that. So when it's contrived, I have less patience.
Gotcha. Okay.
I was living in the Kalahari and working, and our school ran out of water.
Okay.
The well stopped, and we basically took the water out of the storage tank. We gave every kid, we had 240 kids in the school, gave them water, we gave them a loaf of bread, and then we sent them back to their villages. And some of these kids were walking 60 kilometers through the desert in their little clan groups to get back to the village. Right. Yeah, that's real.
Right.
And we sent them off knowing that the oldest kids would make sure that the youngest kids got to the village. So you're in that contrived world. Realness, what the world experiences on a daily basis is far more interesting and compelling to me.
Oh, for sure. Versus kind of structured setup there. So you were teaching at a school, is this in Zimbabwe or were you in multiple countries in Africa?
I was in Botswana. So that job was, Botswana's just above South Africa. It's bordered by Namibia and then Zimbabwe at the top and sort of off to the side Mozambique. It doesn't touch Mozambique. And it's the Kalahari Desert. So I'd taken a job there to teach in a school working for the Botswanan government.
How did you find that job? Where does that even come up? Like, how are you getting recruited for that?
There was a full-page advertisement in the Guardian newspaper in Britain, and I'd come back from the US. I'd run the visa game for a long time, and I needed to do something different. And I just applied, and I was the first person they interviewed. And they said, how will you do with a remote setting? And I said, I'd love it. And they definitely stuck me in a really remote setting. And I spent a year in the southern Kalahari.
Did they get a lot of applicants for that job?
They did actually. I think there was a recruitment for qualified teachers, but one of the problems with it is it was a British model in the Botswanan schools to teach a southern African state that probably wasn't best served by that approach.
Okay.
And that was my frustration by the end, was like, oh, actually, I'm actually not part of the solution, I'm a bit of the problem.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I think that's that other piece that we look at is how do we become part of a solution? And it like the things that we face here in the United States around access to wilderness areas, or how we're conducting ourselves with LNT, all those pieces come down to personal judgment, understanding who and what we are. And the more clarity you have with that, the more chance you have of preserving or actually making good decisions.
It's tough when, if you're you said you're part of the problem. It's tough when you are part of the system that's the problem and you can't change the system. That's rough. There's not a lot of options at that point, right?
Right now, I look at the outdoor world, and there's a lot of independence of like, I want to be the fastest, I want to do this, I want to do it this way. And actually, it's that idea that we model out there really good practice.
Right.
And we take the time to have an easy conversation with somebody on the trail, not to instantly pass judgment on them, to understand where they come from. They might say, hey, I just threw my trash away because it's my first time out on the trail, I'm having a really good time. You're like, well, what's good about it? And they start talking about it. And then you say a little later, hey, one of the things I find to keep it experience is to really minimize my impact. So I always carry a little bag and I pick up my trash. That's a really different way of going at someone being like, you're breaking it, you're the problem.
If there's one takeaway from our conversation that we're having, is I'm blown away by how much experience you have, and yet you are just so gracious with how you're viewing, like, how folks are interacting with the outdoors and the mistakes they're making. You're very understanding, so I appreciate that about you. That's amazing.
But it's the idea, but we have different appreciation. If you look at the Wilderness Act, which is this sort of an amazing piece of legislation in the United States to really guard these crown jewels of our natural environment, what the Wilderness Act does is it has a line that says untrammeled by man, and it completely negates thousands of years of occupation by indigenous and native people who lived in not necessarily harmony, but they lived on that land for eons. And so we've come in and we've stamped my idea of what the way to look after them, and it's the way it should be preserved. Why is my idea better than anybody else's? The Wilderness Act in its essence is a good thing because it's our highest level of protection, but we need to revisit how all cultures are made welcome or appreciated in that outdoor setting. And the outdoor industry has not been good at that.
Let's be honest. If you're still bringing a beat-up cardboard sign to the summit, it's time for an upgrade to your gear list with something that's probably missing. Summit Something makes ultralight, packable summit flags designed for hikers and climbers who want to capture the moment and keep it forever. These summit flags feature clean, iconic designs of the peaks you've climbed, so your summit photos actually look as epic as the experience you felt. And when you get home, it's not trash, it's a keepsake. Something you hang on your wall and remember, I did that. If you got a big climb coming up or just knocked one off your list, grab your summit flag at summitsomething.com. If you're looking for a sign, this is it. Are you tired of supporting outdoor brands that scour the globe exploiting the most destitute people and laxist environmental laws, putting profit above absolutely everything? No longer do you have to add fuel to the environmental and social dumpster fire to get the best quality gear for your next hike. Introducing Magnet Designs. Through hiker design, tested, built, and owned, everything they sell has been tested, tweaked, and punished on long trails all over the world. Check out their best-selling product, the Bend Alpha 90 hoodie, made in Bend, Oregon, using USA made from recycled materials, Polar Tech Alpha Direct fabric. Ultralight, compressible, hydrophobic, breathable, quick drying, and stylish. Weighing in at just 4.5 ounces in a men's medium. Put your ethical quagmire to bed when you support Magnet Designs. Be confident you're getting the most vetted products for what we do with the smallest possible environmental footprint. Designed on trail, built for trail life, handmade to order in Bend, Oregon. Visit magnetdesigns.com with no E in designs.
What would you do if your online store converted 36% more shoppers? You could take 36% more vacation.
Another pina colada?
Yes, please.
Open a new retail location with 36% more square feet.
Fantastic.
Hire 36% more help.
You're hired and you're hired.
Shopify has the world's best converting checkout, up to 36% better than other e-commerce platforms. What you do with those extra sales is up to you. Switch to Shopify today at shopify.com/listen and get a $1 trial. Shopify.com/listen.
Okay, I got a question. Jumping back to like the search and rescue side of things, I got a question about protocols with search and rescue. So you'd think that helicopter rescue that I had back in the 90s was my only experience with Yosemite search and rescue. You'd think, but it was not.
So, you're a frequent flyer. This is good.
Maybe,
Really
they might
good.
know me by name. Oh, okay, Carl again.
You're custom number 6. Yeah.
This next one, I was the caller. I wasn't the one that was in trouble, but we set up, you talked about how people are trying to set these backcountry records or whatever. And so a few years ago, back during COVID, we set up a course over Red Peak Pass. Are you familiar with the area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's a 50-mile loop. You start kind of near Glacier Point, and there's a 50-mile loop that we were setting up, and we had backpacked that section. I think we did it, when we were younger in 3 days, and then 10 years later we did it in 4 days. And I was like, let's try to do this in 1 day. Let's try to make this happen. So we trained for it, and I was kind of the guy leading the charge, and I ended up getting hurt to the point where I couldn't participate. But the other 2 guys that wanted to go were like, well, we still want to do this. And I was like, all right, great. So they weren't typically trip leaders, and so they weren't good, as you mentioned earlier, with like the map and the compass and this and that. And there's some other tools that we could have had with us that would have made it safer. But they took off. They didn't have a locator beacon. I was there just kind of as support, just at the trailhead, making sure, they were okay at the beginning and at the end. They were kind of due back towards midnight of that day, maybe a little bit earlier, and they didn't turn up. And by 6 a.m., they still didn't turn up the following day. And so I waited, I want to say, 4 more hours before calling search and rescue and saying, look, these guys are like, in my mind at least, they're way overdue. And so here's my question about the protocol is, so I call up, and I think you just called 911 in Yosemite, is that right?
Yeah, and it ends up in a dispatch center, and then it comes back to whatever the IC is. Maybe you might get hold of somebody in SAR.
So I call, and so they're asking all the questions, like what clothes are they wearing? What do they look like? What are their ages? Whereabouts were they supposed to be? So I go through like a 5-minute questionnaire on the phone with them, and they're like, okay, great, we got all this down. We're going to pass you on to whatever the next level is. So I get to the second level, and that person that I'm on the phone with asks literally the exact same questions. They pass me on to a third person who asks me again the same questions. And so at this point, I'm not like freaking out because I don't think my friends are like dead or anything, but I want them to jump into action, and they're just asking the same questions over and over again. So I'm getting a little frustrated here. What is that? Like, what just happened to me with 3 people asking me the same questions?
So you're probably in 3 different locations. So the dispatch center is actually typing that stuff into a report, right? They're sort of saying, okay, that computer system doesn't work in remote settings. So they haven't got a link into that. So what's happening is the dispatch person is run at the incident commander, who's ever's on, and read off the sheet and said, okay, this is what we've got. And they go, okay, here's the number. And the person goes, all right, I've got a rough idea. Let me make that call. So they end up talking to you, and they go, so what's happening? And they're essentially they're figuring stuff out, and they go, oh, you know what? This is in a different district. This is in Southern District in Wawona. So what we're going to do is we're going to run it out of there. So we'll get another IC on who's more local and got better coverage, and we'll transfer it down to Wawona. So you get the third person who's now saying, hey, tell me again what's going on. It's because we don't have high-tech computers. We don't have all of those pieces to have the same information related. And it's also a time to cross-reference because you're also looking for inconsistencies.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So if I'm talking to someone, I might ask the same questions 2 or 3 times because I want to double check I've got it right and I haven't misheard anything. And I want to make sure when I pass it on, I'm 100% sure what's going on.
Okay. So if you do hear inconsistencies, you're obviously going to follow up and say, okay, well, you said this at first, and then you said this now. Now you're saying this. So which one of these is correct, or how do you address that?
So here's a good one. So we have a college group who reports somebody missing after like 6 or 8 hours. and they start digging down on that college group and say, hang on a minute, have they been missing 6 or 8 hours? And they start to fudge it a little bit. Well, they've been missing for 24 hours. You know why they're not talking about it? Because he was tripping.
Okay.
The person who disappeared was on drugs, and they were scared to be truthful. So they held back from that actually complicated the response. Because instead of coming in and saying 6 to 8 hours, hang on a minute, it's good weather. They kind of they've got some clothes on. We're now dealing with someone who's been gone for 24 hours who was under the influence. That's a very different response.
I guess that makes sense. I feel like my stories were the same. The response was basically like, we'll check to see if they've turned up at the trailhead, but it was a very slow, like, we got to wait till they're missing longer type of response, which in the moment I was like, I was, I guess, surprised by it. Not that I was expecting like a helicopter to go searching for them, but then after the fact, when they eventually did turn up and they just had taken the wrong trail and, you know, basically they just gotten lost, but not like lost off trail or anything. It all made sense, like how the turnout. But the protocol at first was the surprising part, I guess.
But it also is down to time. Like if you get a call at 4:00 in the afternoon for Red Peak Pass and a southern flight, and there's a fire on the north end, and we have one helicopter that's running that, and they're actually dealing with an emergency out of Hetch Hetchy, then and it's been stable weather system. Your friends have really good equipment. They're on a relatively open terrain. The Illilouette Basin's been pretty burnt. It's burnt out. It's got pretty good visibility. You can look up and see Half Dome. There are lots of reasons to have optimism at that moment. And so they come down as far as like, oh, if we're going to respond. And we're not going to really look at it until the morning because we can't put anybody on the ground out there anyway until mid-morning with a helicopter flight.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
So a lot of times you see people wanting instantaneous action. Hey, we got a cardiac. It's up here at Merced Lake. It's going to take an hour, maybe 40 minutes. Right. You might get lucky with a helicopter. It's in the air. You redirect, but it's hours to get response in.
Well, this is good information for the next time I call a search and rescue, so I'll be prepared.
You should show your frequent customer card and say, I've done this before, I believe. On the third one, I qualify for free donuts and coffee. And they'll be like, absolutely, sir.
Well, we went back last summer, so this is in August, and we tried it again and this time I wasn't hurt, and I just was with one of the buddies, decided to do it again. But if you remember last summer, that was the one that was a big snow year, right? So even in August, on the north side of Red Peak Pass, there's just covered in August, and so I was like, so as we're ascending the south side and experiencing snow, I'm like, the north side's gonna be way worse. We didn't know what it looked like on that side of it. I was like, we might be calling again because we're not in a good situation again. So kind of funny, but it all worked out.
Which is that I think if you're on that repeat cycle, there's a good chance that you should just stop and go, hang on a minute. What is the consistent piece in this adventure?
Right.
And the consistent piece is you. Right. And so, look at that and go, hang on a minute. Is there something I can learn from these experiences? Which is why I think writing about it's a good thing. Is that myth is a really important thing. Storytelling is a really important thing because that, in truth, it's a lost art because we've taken it down to 15 seconds on TikTok or Instagram. And actually the best stuff's around a campfire at night and you're just hearing the most ludicrous stories.
Right.
And people have come through it, but you've shared this sort of professional incompetence. There's those things that you've done on a personal level and gone, and you know what? It's not going to happen again. And you've shared it. It's a lesson.
I think through the way I've told this story, it does sound like I'm the consistent piece here. But in the end, I've had one rescue when I was 19 years old before I was experienced. So the rest were I was involved, I guess, but not needing a rescue personally.
You were a bit player in it. You were in the sort of production team. Yeah.
Correct. Okay. So we did bring with us a locator beacon. We're on that train now, and so we had that with us on our last trip, and we bring that with us on our backpacking trips now. What's your opinion of the increasing use of locator beacons in the backcountry?
I think they're great if they give people a little bit more confidence to go out there and say, I've got this sort of standby thing. I think that remains to be seen if all the times that people push are, and I use this word careful, worthy, that they've heard a loud noise and they panic and they push it, and that's just being in the outdoors, the loud noises. But I'm not incredibly anti them. Do Do you remember the early ones, the
Right.
ones that came out? You could have messages on them. You could like text messages, and we had some.
Yeah, they still have those.
Yeah, we had somebody who like sent a message, and they said, "Oh, I'm on top of this peak. They're out on the crest, and I'm experiencing shortness of breath
Right.
and racing heartbeat." We're like, "Okay, we're on our way," and the helicopter's sort of gearing up, and then takes a while to get the helicopter out there. And during that time, we get another message, which is, "Actually, I'm feeling much better. I can now breathe, and my heart has slowed down." And then a little while later, we get another message, which is, "Actually, I think I'm having a heart attack again." And actually what had happened on that GPS is they'd been on a summit and they'd gone down to a lower point and they go back. And what they were experiencing was the effect of altitude. It wasn't a cardiac.
Right.
They were just experiencing
Right.
altitude. But in that loneliness, that isolation, but that's the only one that sort of stands out in my mind as being a little bit like, hang on a minute.
Okay. So were you able to message back like, just get to lower elevation, stay there?
I can't remember how that all worked out, actually. There was quite a lot going on, I think, that day. But it provided some merriment as we realized what it was.
Merriment. Okay. That's funny. I know that we did an episode, I think it was last fall, where Garmin reported out, and Garmin's just one of the brands that makes these beacons, but they reported out that they've now done they had 10,000 calls as of like last year, I want to say. And so I was like, 10,000 that's so many. And I mean, I just imagine that number is just going to continue to increase as more people are using the backcountry and then actually buying these beacons. So that's why I was just curious what your opinion was.
It would be interesting to look at that breakdown as well over users and see how much of it is the sort of backpack crew through to rural communities where they've used it because they're going on a fishing trip in a remote river in Alaska, and like what that breakdown is. Because I think we would find that the backpacker group is a smaller percentage of a much larger user group.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I know people have used them, even just driving around, they get in a car accident in a remote place. They've used it for something like that. Yeah, that's a good point. And speaking of that, so we're going to put this out this week, but you shared with me a video clip of a training session, Swiftwater training, where you're just jumping into the Merced River, into the rapids. Is that from this year?
Yeah, that's from this month. So we trained April and May this year. We normally were training in March, but it's pretty cold. And that video I shared was day one. It's the first long swim that people on the class are going to do. They're going to swim about quarter to half a mile, and it's full spring
in the river.
float. Yeah, full spring float. Flows, and they're going to swim in pairs. And we're teaching them the ferry angle and how to not tire themselves out, regulate their breathing, and they're just going to keep swimming down that stretch.
Wow. All right. Yeah. So that we'll have that out here in a couple days, but that was an impressive shot for sure. Just kind of just lining up and just jumping into the swift water. So that was cool.
And we've got really good safety. We're running with, I think that group was maybe 10 or 12 people, and we had 3 instructors. We had an instructor come in from Zion National Park, and then we had a ranger who's an instructor from Yosemite. So we had 3 of us who were all competent in the water to cover the safety.
That was impressive to me. So, and yeah, everything that your kind of general view and attitude towards just search and rescue and adventure in general, really appreciate it. So we always save our last question for you. How can people find you or follow you? Or is there anything you'd like to share, anything you'd like to promote, or anything you got going on?
You can get a hold of me at www.moosemutlow.com. And that's a website where my training and my books are. I have a couple of books out. I have a book really specifically about a component of search and rescue, which is called When Accidents Happen. It looks at the role of the family liaison officer in working in crisis communication. And I have a book called Searching, which is finding purpose, laughter, and distraction through search and rescue, which is more of a biography of missions I've been on and the impacts of that long-term exposure to trauma.
Okay, wow. All right.
And I'm on the Instagram as well. I'm at Moose Mutlow on the Instagram.
Okay.
So, yeah.
We'll have links for those in our show description so you can just click right on that. And Moose, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for coming on our show. This has been an honor and a pleasure, sir.
Well, thank you very much. And next time you're in Yosemite, please give me a shout so we can give a heads up to search and rescue that you're around, because I'd say that could be a good investment of time. No, thank you very much. I've enjoyed it.
I want to fly. más con Lowe's y lleva cada proyecto al siguiente nivel. Ahorra 15% en una selección de puertas de entradas e interiores personalizadas. Además, ahorra $80 en un kit de 2 herramientas de Wolf de 20 voltios max por $169. Y en el Pro Desk de Lowe's trae tu lista de materiales escrita o en una foto y recibe una cotización en minutos. Agiliza tus proyectos mientras sigues ahorrando con Lowe's. Válido hasta 7/8 hasta agotar existencia. Selección varía por lugar.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.